Hi, today we're going to take a look at the Sigma 14mm DG DN lens. So let's see what it can do. Today we take a look at an innovative lens announced back in 2023, the Sigma 14mm F1.4 DG DN Art, the widest and fastest lens ever produced by the company. Let's start with some background. Making an ultra-fast, ultra-wide-angle lens is not easy. Sigma already has the older 14mm f1.8 DG HSM Art DSLR lens, which has an E-mount version, but the company decided that instead of making a more compact and more affordable mirrorless version of that lens, to design the fastest ever 14mm production lens in existence in the form of the 14mm f1.4 DG DN lens. Let's begin with the optical design. The lens, unsurprisingly, has a complex optical design including 19 elements in 15 groups, including 4 spherical elements, 3 FLD elements, and 1 SLD element. According to Sigma, the lens uses lightweight materials such as polycarbonate TSC as well as magnesium to reduce weight while ensuring robustness. In our hands, this lens certainly feels extremely robust. This level of robustness definitely comes at a cost, and that is size and weight. With the caps, the lens is 17 cm long and weigh in at over 1.2 kg, not light by any standard. The lens includes a decently wide focus ring in the front and a narrow aperture ring with a lock closer to the camera. Our copy of the lens seems to make a slight grinding noise when turning. We treat this as a strange anomaly as we handle the lens with great care, so we are not sure how this could have happened. Other than that, the ring seems to turn fairly well and has a good resistance. The aperture ring can be set to either a click or declick mode, and in the declick mode it seems to have good resistance. The lens is packed with interesting features including an AF-MF switch, focus hold button, MFL switch which prevents the focus from changing accidentally when using the manual focus, great for astrophotography, as well as that declick switch which we have mentioned previously. According to Sigma, the lens is fully weather sealed. The Sigma 14mm f1.4 lens comes in a full-frame E-mount version and an L-mount variant. The lens comes with a non-removable short hood and a large thick cap with an interesting secret feature that we shall discuss in a moment. Aside from the cap, the lens comes in a nice padded carrying case, and it is designed in such a way that it should be able to hold a lens heater using a special retainer. The lens has no less than 11 aperture blades. We will see how this affects the bokeh of the lens later in this review. The lens can use normal front filters due to its huge curved front element, just like other 14mm lenses. However, it can take gel filters in the back and even has an interesting storage compartment in the large cap that comes with the lens. Certainly a unique design choice, although we didn't have any of these gels to test the lens with. The lens comes with a removable collar and a tiny foot that is super close to the lens in a way that does not allow to place the fingers between the foot and the lens, something that we don't really care for. And there is also no 90-degree angle clicks. Maybe the only positive thing that we can say about the foot is that it has an Arca base. Now let's move over to performance and we'll start with focusing. Although we didn't run our normal autofocus test on this lens, it is also not typically all that important on an ultra-wide angle lens, and working with the lens we did not encounter any focusing issues. As you would expect, the lens has no image stabilization, so you are relying on your camera's IBIS, but again, this is less relevant for an ultra-wide angle lens. You can see how well it works on our Sony a7R5 in different video modes. We tested the sharpness of the lens against the Sony 14mm f1.8 GM lens using our Imates high-end chart. Keep in mind that using these type of ultra-wide-angle lenses with the chart means that you need to be very close, and you will see in a second how this influences our results. We start with the Sigma, and you can see that even wide open, it is fairly sharp in the center, but with what seems like a pretty nice improvement in both sharpness and contrast at around f2. The corners are the more interesting story here, and as you can see, the lens is not sharp at all in our test, and even if we stop down to f5.6, the image isn't sharp and only become acceptable at around f8. We will get back to this result, but first let's look at the Sony. In the center at f1.8, the lens is pretty sharp with maybe a slight improvement between f2 and f2.2. The corners are again not extremely sharp until around f5.6 with another improvement at f8. So what is going on here? Well, with the distortion compensation turned off in the camera, it is easy to see the effect of field curvature on both lenses, the Sigma more than the Sony. With the distortion compensation turned on in the camera and at normal working distances, corner sharpness is less affected. Results should be much more acceptable. Overall though, the Sony does feel sharper wide open. On paper, the official minimum close-up distance of the Sigma is 30 cm, about 5 cm longer than the Sony. Both have a pretty awful maximum macro magnification of 1:11 and 1:10 respectively, so they are not even remotely designed for close-up work. Our close-up sharpness test was certainly interesting. The Sigma showcased an okay sharpness in the center wide open, but you can clearly see a big difference in sharpness and contrast closing down to around f2.8. The corners show a pretty similar story with a big improvement at f2.8, especially in contrast, but sharpness is still affected by the same issue that we have seen before in our regular sharpness test. We didn't have a chance to run this test on the Sony 14mm as we only had the lens on loan for a few hours in the studio. When it comes to breathing, the Sigma demonstrated some visible breathing in our test. Again, we didn't have a chance to test the Sony. The Sigma performed very well in a chromatic aberration test, and even wide open you only see tiny hints of longitudinal chromatic aberrations, which are completely gone when closing down. In our testing, the lens has quite a bit of flare both in the front and when light enters from the side, so you need to be careful when shooting into bright light sources. Wide open with the camera compensation turned off, the lens has a ton of vignetting, which is even somewhat present at f4. We did have a chance to test the Sony for vignetting and it has quite a bit as well, but for some reason it did not seem to be reduced much as we closed down. With the in-camera geometric distortion compensation turned off, the Sigma has a ton of barrel distortion. This might very well be part of the reason why we have seen the results that we have seen in terms of the sharpness in the corners, so make sure you turn on those in-camera corrections when using this lens. The Sony certainly has some distortion, but nothing that bad, and to our eyes it also looks like the Sony is the wider lens of the two. We didn't get a chance to test the bokeh of the Sony, but the Sigma actually has a surprisingly nice bokeh balls wide open if you are close enough to your subject, especially in the center. They are round and clean, and you could sort of see that in the actual frame that we took during an evening walk downtown. We used the lens over a period of several months, and here are a few images taken with our Sony A7R Mark V and our Sony A1. We also had a chance to shoot with the lens in the south of the country in the middle of the desert with a group of astrophotographers, a first-time experience for us. So let's conclude. The Sigma 14mm F1.4 DG DN lens is a technological marvel and a testament to the capabilities of the Sigma lens design team and what they can achieve when given the chance to create a groundbreaking lens. The lens has great build quality, a nice set of features, fast focusing, good center sharpness, low chromatic aberrations, and a pretty nice bokeh. With that said, the lens is also big, heavy, and cumbersome to use. While all of these might be acceptable for some users, what is less acceptable is the price. If the lens would have existed in a vacuum, Sigma might have been able to convince some users that its level of innovation merits its high price tag. However, in a world where the smaller and sharper Sony 14mm GM lens exists and cost less, we find the Sigma current price tag hard to swallow. Here we come to the real question behind this review. Is there even a market for a 14mm f1.4 lens? Most professional landscape and architectural photographers have no need for such a fast ultra-wide-angle lens, as most of their work is done at much slower apertures. The exception might be those who shoot nighttime stills and video cityscape time-lapses. The second group that might benefit in some way from such a fast lens is astrophotographers. The ones that we spoke to did not see a clear enough advantage of the f1.4 over the f1.8 lens, or at least not enough to justify the high cost and added bulk of the lens, except for maybe video work shooting things such as the Northern Lights. With that said, we really want to hear what you think. From your experience, is there really a need for such a fast ultra-wide-angle lens, even if you consider the extra cost and bulk? Let us know in the comments. Finally, pricing. Currently, the Sigma 14mm f1.4 DG DN Art lens sells for $1,600. This is surprisingly still exactly the same price as the older Sigma 14mm f1.8 DG HSM Art lens, while the Sony 14mm f1.8 GM lens sells for $1,500. So that was our look at the Sigma 14mm f1.4 DG DN lens. You can check out the full review with all of our test results on lensvid.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. See you in the next video.